Okay, it is 3 o'clock, and this is the March 4th meeting of the Architecture Advisory Committee. We ask people in the audience, please silence all cell phones and pagers. Planning Director, roll call, please.
Member Dosey?
Present.
Member Lockyer?
Present.
Member McCoy?
Present.
Member Payline? Member Walsh?
Here.
Vice Chair Rotman?
Present.
Chair Jakeway?
Present.
We have a quorum.
Okay, may we have a staff report on the agenda?
Mr. Chair, the agenda was posted on Thursday, February the 28th. This meeting has been noticed and posted in accordance with state law.
Do we have any revisions to the agenda from anybody on the committee? Motion to accept the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Since this is a public meeting, audience members are permitted to comment on any issue that is within this committee's purview. Comments on an item appearing on today's agenda are made at the time that that item is presented. If you want to speak on an item not on today's agenda, you may speak now. Each speaker will have 3 minutes. Anybody not speaking on an item? Okay, then we can move ahead. First item is the minutes from our last meeting of February 4th. Do we have any comments or changes to those minutes?
Mr. Chair, it was noted that we had recorded the vote incorrectly on item number 2, that Mr. Dosey had actually voted no on that item.
Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay,
And so consequently, we will make that change.
thank you.
And I have to abstain from voting on item number 2.
Okay. Any other comments?
Well, abstain from item number 3.
There is no
Yes.
item number 3.
Oh, sorry.
Last week
I'm sorry, of the minutes.
of the minutes, okay,
Yeah, and it was item 4.
okay. Mr. Lockyer will not be responding to item number 4 from the minutes of the last meeting. Any
So-
other changes or corrections? Do we have a motion to accept?
Make a motion to accept the minutes.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, let's move on to our agenda, new business. The Cole Hotel Lodge LLC for a minor architectural application to renovate an existing hotel, including improvements to the building facades, an addition of 528 square feet, and construction of a new parking lot at 2323 North Palm Canyon Drive. Staff report?
Yes, Mr. Chair and committee members, what you have before you is a renovation of an existing hotel apartment building that was built back in 1958. So what you see here on the screen is the existing configuration of the building situated at the corner of North Palm Canyon Drive and West Villalona. Presently, there are 2 access points from Palm Canyon. Those are 2 vehicular access points that you see here on the top of the screen to the parking area and where there's a portico share that vehicles can travel through as it currently is configured today. So what they are proposing to do is expand the pool area and push that out closer towards the street, and I'll go through some of those exhibits here in just a second, as well as construct a new parking lot to the north of the hotel building. So the photos here show you the current conditions of the property. These are views from North Palm Canyon Drive. And what you see here is a rendering of the proposed expansion located just to the north of the existing lobby area. So they're relocating the lobby from the corner building, which has the gable roof on the left on the top, to the smaller building and expanding that slightly. The total addition for the project is roughly 528 square feet, and that is located within this building and a small breezeway to the left of, or to the west of the lobby lounge that you see on the site plan. So they also show the proposed color and materials at the bottom of the screen. It's stucco that will be painted these neutral tan taupe colors. There will be a soffit installed on the overhang. There's existing stone that you see that will remain, and they are proposing to match the stone in additional space or additional locations. Again, another rendering that is showing the building in the corner. And this view here shows the proposed block wall along Palm Canyon Drive. It is a shadow block material, and the landscaping that would be installed along this frontage here, as well as the conceptual design of the proposed main sign. So the view that you see are existing photographs on the south side of the building. So this is the Via Lola facade as it is currently today. And these are the proposed elevations or renderings of the elevations with the improvements to the facade. As a part of this, you'll see in the plan the trash enclosure that is currently on the site plan would be relocated slightly to face the alley, and they would pick up a couple additional parking stalls with that change. So these are the proposed finishes for the exterior. Again, you can see they are repainting. The primary color is the one that on the top left. It's a light tan or taupe color, and then some of the accent colors are next to it to the right of it. Some of the proposed tile for the shower and pool areas is on the top right. And then the shadow block is shown on the bottom left with the soffit wood material next to that and the proposed rock. They are proposing a couple of cabanas, which you see on the bottom right within the pool area, and I'll show you those in just a moment. So this, going back to the existing site plan, this is what it is currently today, and the proposed, you can see the expansion of the lobby area or the newly located lobby area. Here, they're proposing the kitchen where the breezeway was for the lounge restaurant space that will be accessory to the hotel and only for hotel guests. The cabanas you see to the north or to the east of the pool, which would be above the pool in this diagram, as well as the newly constructed parking lot and wall along Palm Canyon. And so this is the elevation here on the top of the Palm Canyon frontage, as well as the south elevation along Via Lola. These are some details of the interior elevations on the new building, as well as the elevation of the proposed cabana. So the cabana will be 8 feet in height. The landscape design does include groupings of plant materials consistent with those that the city desires. And I did provide in your staff report an analysis of the proposed materials as it relates to the Coachella Valley Water District's Lush and Efficient Guidebook. So most of those materials that were selected are in fact within that book, and so they are appropriate for the proposed or for the desert environment. Just going back to the site plan real quickly, the staff report noted that they would be installing solar carports. That is actually not going to be the case from discussions I've had with the applicant. So what staff will be evaluating with the proposed trees is that the project is in conformance with the city's parking lot shading requirements. So that would be one thing that we would have to verify as a part of the final landscape plan for the project. And generally speaking, the proposed tree selections that they have selected do provide adequate shade typically. So Palo Verde trees definitely provide large canopy areas for the parking lot, and they've selected, you can see here on this plan, those within the parking areas. The parking plan is shown on this slide here. They are proposing a total of 42 parking spaces on the plan. The hotel rooms by themselves would require 30 spaces, so they are in excess of parking. They have adequate parking for the proposed facilities. And again, some more renderings of the streetscape along Palm Canyon with the proposed planting materials. And then this exhibit here just shows the proposed sign and elevation view as well as the rendering. So it would be a double-faced sign just extending above the proposed wall along Palm Canyon. They also provided some graphics to give you an idea of the spirit or mood that they're intending to go for with the proposed renovation, and some additional exhibits of interiors that kind of are the inspiration for the project. So that concludes my presentation. Staff did provide an analysis of the project as it relates to the architectural review guidelines in your staff memorandum. And we found that the project is consistent with those guidelines. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have today. The applicant is also here. Mr. Chair.
Thank you, David. Committee, any questions of staff? John McCoy?
David, what is the code setback requirement along the sidewalk for walls in that area?
Typically, the building setback's 5 feet, and they can vary that in the ordinance. It allows for an average of 5 feet. Typically, for walls within the 5-foot area, it's usually a 4.5 foot high limitation. The director has the ability to allow that to be increased to 5 feet because of safety issues related to the pool. So that because of code requirements as it relates to pool safety barriers.
Mr. Dosey?
I have a question. On the site plan, where there was 2 drive accesses off of Palm Canyon Drive, and then one is being closed, and the other one to remain, and I'm just trying, they show the pool equipment. Does that equipment need to be set back? Or what would the setback be for that pool equipment from that Palm Canyon frontage there? It shows up better, I think, on the landscape site plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, right at the middle of the page towards the.
I'll look that up and be happy to answer any questions while I'm looking
Okay.
that up.
It's pretty much right up against the sidewalk, so I didn't know if there was some setback necessary or increased landscape buffer.
I had that same question, especially because it's on Palm Canyon Drive versus a side street.
And is there any issue with circulation for the project with closing of that, what was kind of a loop system before, traffic or circulation?
Yeah, in terms of engineering, they are reviewing this, so they would have to comment on that. But in general, as far as how check-in and how they are reconfiguring the lobby area, we feel it's probably an appropriate removal of that driveway, because the one that does remain does still have check-in parking for guests with access directly to the lobby, and then they would proceed south in the interior driveway to the remaining parking or to the parking lot down the alley. But I just found the code section related to mechanical equipment, and there is nothing required for commercial properties. It would just have to be screened from the street view. It's only in residential where we have mechanical equipment setbacks.
Okay. And would that remaining driveway, would that be a one-way drive, like a right turn in and directional, or?
Yeah, based on the size of it, I would imagine it would have to be only a one-way, but I'll let the applicant clarify,
Okay.
because I don't know the specific dimension of that driveway.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions of staff? John?
David, the ownership of the alley, is that a public right-of-way or,
That is, yes.
okay.
So they'll have to improve that as a part of this project to provide access.
It's one of the conditions.
It will be, yes.
Okay. And the second question about, from engineering really, what is it that triggered the need for a lot merger?
So anytime you have an accessory use or structure, such as a parking lot, it does have to be tied to the primary use, which in this case is the hotel. So they would not be able to keep that as a separate property because it is accessory to the hotel. So the merger would be a requirement of engineering to really tie all of the property together.
Interesting, because I thought I had seen in the past that it could have a different usage or whatever. Yeah, obviously, you couldn't build a building contiguous or any sort of improvements across it, but I wondered if that wouldn't be all right for something like a parking lot. Obviously not, though.
No, because then you could potentially sell the parking lot, and then it wouldn't be tied to the hotel anymore.
Okay. And it's a small point, but I couldn't see, what is the roof material?
I don't know if they indicated that here.
But I might have missed it.
I'll have the applicant answer that question,
Okay,
because I'm
no
not
problem.
certain.
No more questions from
Thank you.
the committee. I think we know that the applicant is here. So please come up to the microphone, give your name and address, and tell us about the project. You have 10 minutes for your presentation and 2 minutes of rebuttal if necessary.
My name is Matthew Rogers, 2345 Camino Paracela Road, Palm Springs. Chair, Vice Chair, committee and staff, thank you for your time today. It's greatly appreciated. We recognize that every project first starts with your guys' committee, and Palm Springs is doing all right. That said, I'm representing the project today. My responsibilities were entitlements and city processing. With me here today is the owner, the architects, and also landscape architects. So if you guys have questions that may not be my expertise, I'll call them up when the time comes. Mark first met with the city on this project back in May of 2018. There were a few issues back and forth, engineering and such, that were worked through. Mark purchased property in June of this last year, and himself and the architects have been working ever since on this renovation. And several issues drew it out longer than they expected. ADA issues, access issues, structural issues, things like that. But also holding the integrity of the building, being from the 50s and being along the main drag of North Palm Canyon. Everyone sees it coming in and out of town. They really wanted to keep the main components and the meat and bones of the project. And so that's kind of what they've been working on the last several months, is the stone to remain, the windows are going to be switched out like for like, the paint colors are a lot of the same paint colors and in the same tones. One of the issues with the property was parking. As existing, there are 16 parking spaces, and so it was short by almost half, and that was when Mark looked at purchasing the 3 lots to the north of the property to provide sufficient parking. And so addressing the solar and the shading, we were proposing solar, but with the height of the building and also setbacks, as we tried to stretch it as far as we could, but it just didn't make sense. And so about a week ago, we pulled the solar from the parking lots, and that is why there is not sufficient shade as it's proposed, but we recognize that we have to meet the 40% shading for the parking lot, and so that will be revised with shade trees. Let's see. Another difficult aspect of the project was open and usable space by the hotel guests. So as the property was originally built with the driveway running through the middle of the project, and the way that the property is built, there's not much space to capture as much usable open space. And so that was the reason why we extended this wall. And so even though we're adding square footage by extending the buildings, we're actually increasing the open space because we're converting a driveway and parking spaces to usable space by our hotel guests. The sign being proposed, we recognize that we have to have a separate application for that. We wanted to show to the committee to get your guys' feedback on location and design of the sign in the meantime. To respond to a couple of the questions, the pool equipment will be behind the pool barrier wall. So it will be hidden, and on top of that, we'll have the landscaping. I'll digress for a second. The wall that goes along the entire frontage of North Palm Canyon, it varies between 1 feet and 5 foot setback. And the reason for that was so that we can get a landscape buffer in there in between the wall and the sidewalk. So beyond the pool barrier wall for the pool equipment, there will also be some landscaping that separates the sidewalk from the wall. That will be a one-way drive coming into the hotel there off from North Palm Canyon. The lot merger is submitted and is in the midst between the engineering and the city, and we expect to have that in the next 4 to 6 weeks. And then the material on the roof, it's to remain. We have no sort of issues with leaking or structural issues with the roof, so it will remain in what it is currently is spray foam. And that concludes the presentation. We're here for questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Committee member questions for the applicant? Who's ready first? John? Sure.
What's the material of the driveways and parking areas?
I'm going to call the architect up for that.
My name is Mark Nelson, and I'm the architect on the project. For the new parking lot, we are going to be going with interlocking pavers to meet low-impact development requirements. And then the existing parking, I believe we're going to just repave the existing asphalt. So the existing driveway in and the strip of parking along Via Olivera would remain asphalt.
Mm-hmm. The curb of the old curb cut, that's being replaced with regular curb and sidewalk there, and the curb cut's going away.
I believe we'll be required to do that.
John Walsh, do you have any questions of the applicant?
What is the nature of the food and beverage? Yeah, the term was used and I just didn't have a sense of the scale of it, or if it's just for hotel guests or what.
Right, yeah. So the food and beverage will be just for the hotel guests. There won't be an individual branded restaurant. It'll just be an amenity for the hotel guests.
That's it.
John McCoy? No question. Robert?
Hi. I'm very familiar with the Bahama Hotel, and so this is a welcomed change. A couple of questions. What is the space, how's the space going to be used on the second floor above the lounge? What is that space?
The second floor above the
if you look at
it's actually a hotel room.
Oh, it is?
It's going to be a suite. Yeah, it's
okay.
it's going to be a specific. It's actually going to be named the honeymoon suite. So it's actually a beautiful view up there, and the overhang comes right under the window, and you can reach out and see the mountains. And
Okay. Do you know what the distance between the back of the building on the west side to the property line is?
I don't know exactly, but I know that it's very close. The building was not necessarily built as the standards would be today, and it's encroaches on the property line quite a bit. I don't know the exact, though.
Right on it.
Yeah.
The reason I ask is that elevation is pretty bleak. So it'd be great if you could come up with something to kind of work with that to enhance it. And also, you have the advantage on the north and south of having some landscaping that will help that, but the west side is completely exposed and it needs a little work.
Well, I agree. The problem we have is the west side is the alley, and we're required to have, I believe, we're supposed to have 24 feet, and we're grandfathered in at 20 feet in width, clear width.
Okay.
And so to take any more for plantings would be kind of difficult. I'll see what we can do with the fire chief, see what
Okay.
he'll allow.
And let me see, I did have one more question, but I don't, go ahead, I'll come back.
Clarification from the planning director. We're looking at, are we only commenting and looking at just the 528 square foot addition, or are we commenting on the design of the existing hotel room building?
We are also commenting on the proposed materials and colors of the existing hotel building.
Great, thank you. I probably should have asked David this question. The new trash enclosure sits in an existing public utility easement. Is that acceptable? Or do you think that's going to have to be moved out of the PUE before it can get engineering approval?
If it's in an existing easement, it would have to be relocated. So another possible location would be further north down the alley.
Well, and I know one of their arguments will be the entire length of that building
Is it,
is in the
yeah.
public utility easement.
Yeah. So it'll be a
It's
challenge.
already happened. Yeah.
Yeah.
Any more questions? Tom, do you have some questions for applicant?
There's some existing power poles that it looks like they go along the alley there on the west side. Will those remain?
Yes, they'll remain. We're moving one guy wire. It's right now it's at like 20 feet, and it only needs to be, I think, 8 feet. So we actually are having that move to accommodate the parking lot.
Thank you.
The existing air conditioning equipment, or what is the proposal for air conditioning for all of the units? It currently looks like on the existing photos, they're wall units and looks like various types and manufacturers.
Yeah, so what we will be replacing all like for like. So what it looks like on the outside, we'll be fitting the new ones inside of those locations.
Question I have is air conditioning equipment for the new lobby and bar and restaurant area. Where is that located?
That will be located, let's see, if you could go to an overall, David.
It's going to be located about right here.
On the ground or on the roof of that building?
On the ground. There's a small package unit AC. Sorry. We're using like small mini split systems we're gonna have two, because this is somewhat of a different building because of the breezeway. So we're gonna have one system for this. There will be a small condensing unit right there in the landscape, and there will be one over here in this corner that feeds the cafe, lounge, and kitchen.
And what about all the kitchen equipment? Where's the venting and fans and all that going to be located?
We haven't quite got that yet. I assume it'll probably have to come out the sidewall.
Yeah, so if that's going to be facing the side street, I think it needs to certainly be handled so that it could be screened or vented. I know there's a decent setback there, so hopefully some landscaping could be located in front of it.
Yes.
Along the western side of the existing building, it looks like the north, from being at the site this weekend, it looks like the northwest corner of the building, the finished floor is several feet below the alley. And then as you come along the alley, those windows into those lower floor rooms, somebody could literally just kick the window open. Are those windows going to remain? Because it seems like all those rooms also have windows facing the pool. Have you given thought to removing those windows?
We've thought of it, but it also is the view of the mountains. And so the owner really doesn't want to remove them for that reason.
I would worry about security and cars, but that's just a comment that I have about that. Okay. Another question. At the entry, what is the green wall made of?
It's going to be plant material.
It will be live plant material?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Sean, you have another question?
Yeah, one more question while you're up here. What is the plan for the window? Is there a window replacement on the existing building, particularly the east side?
East side, let's see.
This side that we're
Sorry,
looking
this
at?
side,
Yeah.
these will be like for like. They'll probably have a small aluminum frame. Right now, they're just glass set into wood blocking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like direct set into wood
Yeah,
columns.
which looks good.
Question for the applicant?
The windows that are in now, those look like the replacement windows. Is that what you're using?
Yes, those were replaced previous to the purchase of the property, and they're newer windows, so we're going to leave them. They aren't necessarily what we would have chosen because they're white, but
And you're going to try and paint it, or what are you going to do? Aren't they vinyl?
they're vinyl, so I don't think we can paint them.
Okay. And do you actually have color samples of the proposed colors?
Yes, we have some, well, we have some painted on the building right now, but then we also have the ones that are in the package.
There were, yeah, but they weren't specified as to what they were.
Oh, okay, we can provide that.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Does the applicant have any other comments to make?
No comments?
Okay, do we have any public comments from the audience regarding this project? And seeing none, I think we'll have our committee discussion to get our reactions. Can we start with Mr. Dosey?
Thank you. This might be a question for staff as well. When I look at the overall, I mean, it's a great improvement to the site, and I'm just trying to see if there's some areas where we can soften the building, you know, adjacent to the hardscape and the alley. And a couple notations, and this would be a question for staff. On some of the projects in other areas of the city where we have bay parking coming in off of an adjacent street, in this case via Olivera, we've been able to, or the city's requested that those particular areas be done in pavers to create a more decorative effect and to soften, you know, the hardscape of it. Is that something that's allowable in this area? My thought is they mentioned the pavers in the rear parking lot, but this one to me is almost more visible and would be a good candidate to have pavers, and even perhaps some cutouts. I think that one rendering that you just had up, is it page 8? Yes. If there's the opportunity, you know, and if it still meets code for parking, to do some cutouts near the stalls where we could get some vertical trees or some kind of tree form, you know, between those actual bay parking and the building itself. Secondly, you know, when they do look at relocating the trash enclosure, again, it just seems like the northwest corner and the southwest corner might be good locations or candidates for some other type of tree form, as long as it doesn't interfere with the power lines, but just something to get some height, you know, adjacent to the two-story building element.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sean?
Yeah, agree with the, is Public Works available to maybe respond to some of those questions about the east side of the alley on the west? And, yeah. Come on up.
Come on down.
So I guess the two questions one question I had for the applicant was the replacement of the curb cut, assuming that's required. And-
Yeah, the removal of the first driveway approach that they were talking about, it can be done, and it's gonna be done through Caltrans. Caltrans is Highway 111, so they do have to go through that process through the state to have that removed, which is it's a little daunting to get that done, but they will have to do that through them. Have to be replaced per their standard. And the new parking lot, typically you'd want a entrance off of Palm Canyon into the new parking lot, but because of the Caltrans difficulties in getting that done, we actually felt it was a better access off of the alley. Our code allows the access off the alley. In fact, our code states that the access should be off of a secondary street, not a primary or a major thoroughfare. So it's actually a better circulation for us, for have them improve the alley, take the access off the alley, rather than dealing with another curb cut with Caltrans.
Yeah, that seems safer to me.
Yeah.
The other question I had was so the west side of the building there, and it's a pretty stark facade, it's gonna be a pretty hot facade also. Is there any ability how much right of way do you guys need to keep so they can maybe encroach beyond a bit with some plans?
The existing right-of-way for any alley in the city streets typically are 20 feet. We don't have very many alleys in the city, but the ones that we do are typically 20. What's there now, I think that building is right on the property line, if not maybe a foot off of the property line. We will need all of the right-of-way necessary in there to complete those improvements to that alley. Typically, your two-way driveway access is 24 feet. We only have 20. We can't gain any more from either side, so we will need it all.
And I didn't see the rear of the building, but what Tom was saying is there a retaining wall at sort of the northwest corner of the building that keeps that, with the finished floors lower than the
Looks
other?
like the building itself is retaining.
Oh,
Yeah, I didn't see that part, but,
I see,
yeah.
yeah. Okey doke.
And then you had a question about, or somebody had a question about the bay parking along Via Escuela? So one of the things that they may have to look at is the bay parking as it relates to current standards for ADA access and driveway approach. So one of the suggestions we made to them was they may possibly have to redesign some of the curb and gutter there to get away from the approach, and maybe possibly design a wedge curb, which gets the slope out of the bay parking, and by putting in a wedge curb, it eliminates the approach and gets the parking lot a little flatter to meet ADA. So there might be a little bit of design work that needs to be done there along Via Escuela.
And along with that, the striped area that's at I guess it would be adjacent to the 3 EV parking spaces, that's just asphalt, but would be striped to indicate a radius?
Yeah, I assume so, yes.
And that could actually, rather than have striping there though, could be curbed and turned into a planter or some type
Sure,
of
yeah.
landscape? Okay, thank you.
On the alley improvement, how far does it extend? Is it just behind this property, or does it extend north to Racket Club?
It's gonna extend to their northerly boundary of their parking lot.
And the rest of it just remains gravel?
There's portions of the alley that have been improved. If they happen to be coming from the other direction, they would have to improve the entire alley. But at this point, it would only be to their northerly boundary of the parking lot.
Okay.
And that could change up to the city engineer, but I can't anticipate him wanting to do that, so.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Yep.
Thanks. So one of the things I noticed was, and I think a few of the other fellow commissioners here brought up, some of the screening along Palm Canyon, particularly at the pool equipment and in the spa. a little torn because I think I'm enjoying what they're doing with the meandering wall. However, at the same time, it feels like there's a couple of places where it could use a bit more buffer of landscape between the public right-of-way and the private. And those are the places where it has maybe the least, so the pool equipment and the spa area. And I wondered if something could be done to improve that with a bit more landscaping, maybe even on the private side, I think would be okay with me. The pool equipment and spa. The material, I think, if it's interlocking pavers over at the rear parking lot on the north, yeah, I mean, I think it would be certainly an improvement for the hotel to have it on the south also, the south and the east. The landscape along the south seems a little bit low from what I can gather. The landscape plan's a little small, but it looks like those are fairly low plants, not quite like what was rendered on the one rendering of the south facade there, where there was some hedge going up into the second story. I don't think that's quite possible with what's currently proposed there on the landscape plan, and it would be nice to get something with some height along that south facade. Equally, along the same with the west, and I wonder if there's a vine, like a ficus ripens vine or something that could be used to encourage some growth.
Yeah, with just a very small plant pocket, you
Right.
could get.
Yeah, something with maybe an inexpensive type of mesh to help it climb. You know, not that the ficus ripens would need that, but if it was something else, then maybe some encouragement with some mesh or something built, structured along there might be an improvement. And otherwise, I think it's a pretty nice looking project and a welcome improvement. So anxious to see this get moved along.
Thank you, Sean. John Walsh?
Yeah, this strikes me as the type of project that is all about the site plan. And I think that, you know, kudos to the design team. I think that you saw the deficiency in terms of the parking, as well as the lack of really controlled public spaces within the facility, and kind of made it work. And, you know, one of the things I'm sure you struggled with it, as it doesn't even get mentioned, is the trapezoidal geometries. You know, so everywhere you're turning, you're having to kind of negotiate these things and make them work. So it's a bit of a gritty building, you know, when you're sort of ushering it around a hairpin turn here. And I think it's a very important shot in the arm for those blocks up there. And I think for that neighborhood in terms of hospitality facilities. If there were an Achilles heel that is not fully resolved, I think it's the alley. And, you know, you've heard some good comments here and things that have been mentioned. Mr. Jakeway's comment about removal of the windows on that ground floor, I think has merit. You know, for those units, it can become an inward-looking experience in terms of the controlled recreational spaces. When you get up to the second floor, those windows are going to be cookers. And if there's a way that a minor encroachment could be allowed for some type of canopy or whatever over that glazing, at least at the second floor, they would pick up the benefit of the west mountain views, as well as some control of that solar gain that they're going to be experiencing. There you go. I think that, you know, I have a pretty positive response to the whole thing. These are minor things, and I think it's a good project. Hopefully will come to good fruition.
Thank you. John McCoy?
I concur with most of what's been said here. I want to address some of the setback issues that I had a question on. Along Palm Canyon, I do like the forms that you're going with and what you're trying to create in the rhythm. My problem with it is that as I pass along Palm Canyon, I don't see any other properties that are pushing walls and things this tight to the sidewalk. you know, I see on the landscape plan, you've got plants called out, particularly Coleandra, up by the parking lot, but you've only got a 1 foot planting space. That plant will not stay within 1 foot. Its tendencies are to have growth spurts and long reaches, and you're going to be intruding into the sidewalk with that. On the inside, you've got a 10-foot planting area, and would like to see some of that given to the public space. I know that would change the rhythm of what you're doing. Is all of the pool equipment space required for the pool equipment? Is, you know, what's the actual layout of the equipment in there? That could be addressed as you look at that facade along the street. You know, same with right at the spa. There's some space behind the spa that, you know, it's only 1 foot planter on the other side of it. On the back side of the building, the comment, word hot was used, which I agree. I get it. The building is what it is, and that's what you have to deal with. But as you pass down to the new areas, you're putting up 5-foot walls periodically, which as you drive down and read, you're continuing that hot feel versus perhaps matching something, playing off the front with shorter planters or shorter walls if you feel that there needs to be a wall. It's wide open, it's not a security wall. So I think that could be softened. You have to address things in that area anyways with the changes for the shading. And so I would take a look at that and see if we can soften up some of that. There's an odd triangular corner right there also where the building ends and the new parking lot begins that looks like it's a little bleak. There could be some softening in there. I'd like to see get a final answer on the trash, what the answer on that is going to be, and does it need to be relocated, and what's going to happen with that. My other minor concern is where the cabanas are. We've got a 5-foot setback to a 5-foot wall. We've got a couple feet, then you've got an 8-foot cabana. And that backside of that 8-foot cabana is louvered, and there is some landscaping drawn in the drawing, but I can't tell what the plants are. I'm not sure exactly. Things aren't called out clearly, and I'm not quite sure what is going on right in there. You have a few plants that are not in the that are outside of the specified guide, which I'm comfortable with you using in limited quantities, but I can't tell what the quantities are without a called out landscape plan. And that's what I've got.
Robert.
Again, thank you I think it's a great looking project. I have a couple little concerns. Some of the comments that have been made already I agree with. My concern is about the windows and the colors. And I really like the proposed color palette if it's a true representation within the packet and on the board of what you're proposing. But having a white window against that, I think is really jarring. And so as much as I hate to say it, I think you might be better off re-examining the color scheme so that if you're stuck with the white vinyl windows, that you work with something that goes with those, unless you're willing to change out all the windows. I agree with Chair Jakeway about the windows on the north side, on the ground level. I don't know if there may be some other alternative to create some sort of a better sense of safety and security for those rooms.
On the west side?
Well, it's the north side.
Okay, I was talking about here.
Oh, but this is where it's low, is right
Right.
here. Yeah, so northwest.
Yeah.
there may be, rather than removing them, there may be something else that you can come up with that provides a better sense of security because they are right at grade, essentially. And if there's any opportunity for any vine pockets or anything along the alley, I think that would be a tremendous help. So, thank you.
Couple of things. I think that Sean's idea of some metal trellis, if you will, that plants could go on would be great along the west side, but I think maybe even more importantly along the south side where you're in front of that bay parking. It's such a stark facade now, and you really see that as you're approaching this building driving north on Palm Canyon Drive. So I think to enhance that elevation and to soften it could be a real bonus for you. I also noticed on the drawings, the fascia of the new building is specifically called out as a metal fascia, but then on the M2 on the materials list, it's called out as a painted wood fascia. I think the metal fascia is kind of out of character with the rest of the building with all these existing wood fascias that we have. And a fascia discussion brings me to my biggest comment, and that is that on the existing building, the existing office that's glassed in on 3 sides and reaches right up to intersect that sloping roof is such a cool little space. And it's totally gone away when you put this heavy fascia coming along the new addition and extending that all the way to the end of the new bar. I think a couple things. I think the new fascia is way too heavy. If you look at all the other fascias and all the other buildings, it looks like they're about 12 inches thick. And I understand that there probably is a bit of a parapet there on that flat roof, but still, if there's anything that could be done to lighten that fascia, but especially in the corner right by the green wall, if that glass element of the end of the bar could be extended as glass all the way down without the fascia cutting through it, I think it would be a very interesting concept on the building. Another thing that always bothers me is that when you park in front of something and you can't see the door in, you've tacked the doors around behind the green wall, and it almost seems like you're trying to find a hidden door to get into the project. Regarding the landscape plan, the largest tree you have is 24 inches box, and almost all the shrub and other material is 5 gallon. I definitely think the trees need to be increased in size and some of the plant material in size. And we haven't seen any lighting, and I'm sure you're going to be providing lighting in the new parking lot, but also in these spaces that are along the street here. And as far as the paving material, I think it would be much more important to have the entry drive and those spaces off of Via Alavera be the pavers so that you get an enhanced experience as you enter the project. And if there's a budget trade-off where we have to move things around, to my eye, it would be better to use the paving in the new parking lot and the pavers where you have your entry and where it's facing the street. I guess that's it. The other question would be, and this is probably just a comment, I would like us to make it a requirement that the existing driveway cut that's being abandoned, that it is removed. I know it's a process that you have to go through with Caltrans, but I've seen other projects in this town where they just leave it there and build a wall behind it, and that looks very odd to me. So I think to be sure that that's removed would be important. Having said all that, I think it's a spectacular project. It's something for that part of town that is really significant, and I don't want to be an impediment at all, so please take my comments as suggestions and give us a great project. Other committee members?
Mr. Chairman, I had a question, and I don't know if it's been addressed regarding if there's a separate pool fence plan. Then it appears from the site plan that they're using the existing 5-foot wall is kind of the barrier for the pool. And I've seen problems with the health department of getting that approved. In fact, you know, if it's any way that you can climb it, or even now they're requesting a clear zone near the fence where people can't climb up on plants and then get over. So I would encourage the applicant to take a look at that. And then they also show some of the lounge chairs in the pool, and we have never yet been able to get a tanning shelf in a public type pool.
Is that because people might jump into it?
It has to do with clear area, and on a residential you can do these, but we've yet to get one on a commercial pool. So I would encourage them to, because it may affect their actual site plan if we're looking at moving some things away from Palm Canyon of how they're gonna secure the pool area.
And they'll also need that pool lift, handicap lift at each pool.
Yes.
Any other comments, Sean?
Back to the windows, just to beat that up for one more minute here. If there, and so I agree with Rotman's suggestion about having a similar language to all the windows. However, if there, it's unfortunate to hear about the vinyl windows, and so if there were a priority or a hierarchy to the replacement of windows, you know, I start with like the lobby building there, and I see it's almost this kind of historical type of facade and the two-story structure there. And when you said that you know, it was a wood stop detail that had been painted, and that was the goal for replacing them, I think that's wonderful, and that's a great idea, and I really like the dark mullion color of that. And so then I would say, well, if I had a priority or a hierarchy, I'd say it'd be really nice to have all of the windows match or mimic each other on the interior of that central courtyard, all the west facing, south facing, and north facing, anything in kind of that central east side of the building. And so if the north and west were something that just absolutely was not financially possible, I'd say that, well, that might be willing to bend on that. But if we could make, if you guys, I don't know if the project's coming back or going to a subcommittee or something, but if it did, it sure would be nice to make that the priority. It's really dialing in that front facade and the approach and the interior courtyard. Not that I'm encouraging neglect of the others, but, you know, that would be the goal. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from any committee members? Do we have a motion? Well, I think our list of comments is that the landscape plan needs to be something that we can read more clearly to see the sizes and placement of the plant material, to see a lighting plan that shows us lighting on all the parking areas, to get a final resolution of the material that's used on the surface of the parking areas. On the building, I think the most critical issue probably is the window issue, and I agree with Sean that there could be a priority established of certain areas where it's pretty critical to keep those windows, and that would especially be on this main lobby building, and then follow that edge around the inside, around the pool. Any other issues?
Along Palm Canyon, the pool.
Yeah, to study the wall placement and setback along Palm Canyon as it relates both the planting pockets between the wall and the existing sidewalk and the location and size of the pool equipment enclosure. It looks to me like that enclosure is much larger than 2 swimming pools would need, but maybe I'm wrong about that.
I would say colors, just.
I think we should have a motion from our vice chairman.
Well, I'm torn because I think it's a great project, and I want you to go forward, but I think there's a lot that we have to see again. So I'm going to move that you take our comments into consideration and that you come back to us.
Thank you. Do we have a second to that?
I'll second that.
Second by Mr. Lockyer. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. Thank you, that's perfect. Well, it was kind of the same. Okay, that completes today's agenda. Is there any new business? Committee member comments or staff member comments? Do we adjourn our meeting at 3:59?
Thank you.